Hello and welcome to Heavy Metal Rex. My name is Waze, and today I want to talk about my 2022 WRX. I've recently clocked over 40,000 miles. Finally, I think I'm at 40,860. And let me tell you, I've got a lot to say in regards to how this car has been treating me and how I've been treating the car itself. So I've actually owned this car for a year and a half, a little bit more than a year and a half. And if you haven't been following the channel, I've been through a lot of stuff with this car. We're talking street racing, drag racing, autocross, track days, and now recently rallycross as well. So you could say I put the car through its paces. Now, what I want to talk about is what's been done to the car, how has it been detrimental in any way, and you know, like how is it to just live with on like a extended period of time. Let's say even as a daily, because to be honest, half of this car's life is just taking care of my family. Before I begin, I want to let you guys know I do have a website, heavymetalrex.com, where I do have all kinds of merch, and I have memberships turned on my YouTube page for those who want to find a way to support me. That's a great way to do. Now, if you've been following the channel, you know what this car has been through and what I've been through. And if you haven't, I'll give you a quick rundown. I got this car in 2022, October, very close to winter. And one of the first things I actually did have my snow tires. And I threw the snow tires on here in a completely stock car, and I went for a drive, and it was a lot of fun. And I already had a 21 WRX before this, and really, I was really surprised when I drove a 22 over my 21, which was actually tuned, and I found that this, it did actually drive a lot better. The thing that really sold me was the clutch was very light. Now, that's something I want to touch on later, hopefully if I can remember, but this car is making a lot of different power levels. I have a couple of different tunes. I'm tuned by Graham from Boosted Performance, and I also have a tune from Anthony over at D-Man. And I've had a 93 tune, I have an ethanol blend, and I have a full E85 tune, making anywhere between 340 horsepower all the way up to 385. Now my torque is pretty high on my ethanol build. It's somewhere around 420, 430, which is scary high for a lot of people who are still running the stock transmission. Like myself, I do have the stock transmission in there. I have an STI short throw shifter with a Perrin shifter stop. I actually never installed the shifter plate and bushing just because I always thought that I was going to replace it with the STI transmission. That just never happened. Obviously, the engine itself is stock. I have a Perrin Intake, Perrin Turbo inlet. I have their diverter valve. I have their front mount intercooler. I have their AOS. And is that all I really have? I think that's all I really have on here. There's a couple other parts, but it's inconsequential to the power itself. So with all that, that's the kind of power I'm making. Now, I guess I have a custom jpipe. It is actually an Invidia jpipe from a VA WRX that we cut. It was catless, and we actually welded a cap to it, a Jesse 400 cap to it. And I'm using a MAPerformance catback from a VA WRX as well. So it is a hodgepodge of parts front to back, and I hope to eventually be able to change that in the near future. But with the way that the car is, I have pushed it a lot, and reliability and stability of the car and the platform comes up a lot. And of course, the car has only really been out about two years now. We're going to get the 2024 version here in a few months, and then we can see if like the 23 was okay. And I'd say outside of like two issues that I know for sure, which was there was some issue with like the fuel pump regulator, like way in the beginning when it was like the 22 WRX first came out. That didn't really impact us in any real way. And then there was the axle recall that happened last year, which was supposed to happen and also be taken care of in the beginning of the year. I haven't heard anything else about it. So besides those two things, there really hasn't been anything else that has been a problem on this car in general. Now my car itself, considering how much abuse it's been through, I'll be honest, to me, it still drives like the day that I got it. Of course, not counting all the modded parts on here, it doesn't really feel like I've hurt the car in any way, for lack of a better word, and it still runs incredibly well. Now, the clutch I did want to talk about, because the OEM clutch is very soft, is very light. Now, for whatever reason, this clutch over time has become incredibly stiff, and I actually didn't realize it until I sat in one of my buddy's cars, and of course they also sat in mine, and they couldn't believe how much effort it took for the clutch to be pushed. And that's really about it. The shifter still feels exactly the same. The notchiness of the STI short throw shifter is still there, albeit the throws are not quite as short as something like from Billetworks or whatever. But overall, again, no real complaints. I mean, through the drag racing and the track days, that's probably where it gets put through its paces the most, or probably more so the track. The track, I've done 4 track days on this so far, and I've done 4 on my VA WRX, and being able to compare them back to back with 1 year and then the next was very interesting, because although the VA WRX was also great to drive, this just felt a bit better. Oh, I guess I forgot, I do have an oil cooler from Perrin as well. The track day reminded me that. There was no issues. I mean, without the oil cooler, the oil temperatures did go pretty high compared to my VA, but I never pushed my VA the way I pushed my VB. And I think that's more a testament to myself, learning from my VA to my VB. The car never had any issues, whether it came to fueling, whether it came to the engine itself or the transmission. And I made mistakes, I will be honest. I think I had 2 money shifts on the first track day that I did. And again, was there any issue with the car that was apparent right away? No. And to this day, I still really haven't had anything else. So I guess you could say that my car being at 40,000 miles would be equivalent to somebody who's just doing some canyon driving on the weekend, maybe 2-3 weekends a month for maybe 80 to 100,000 miles, I would say, because like I know people say, well, I push my car on the road a lot and I floor it at every intersection. That still doesn't really put it under the same kind of abuse that I've put it in, because I've dedicated most of its life to pushing the car as much as I can, and I don't expect to stop anytime soon. Next year I'm going to be doing actual sanctioned racing, which is going to push the car even more, and we'll see exactly what happens with that. So that's everything with the engine, and I want to take you guys inside because there's a few more things I want to talk about. Now, this is where you're going to spend majority of your time, obviously, because you're going to be driving the car, and this is where the most of the changes have occurred. Now, I've told you I've driven this car a lot, and especially now with Rallycross, I'm finding that there are certain parts of the car that are starting to just kind of give away. So I have tons of rattles here on the pillar. I have rattles somewhere underneath the dash. I have rattles in the center console. I don't know where they're coming from, and there's really not much I can do about it other than maybe take everything apart. But with the way that this car, with everything that it's been through, I'm surprised that that's the only rattles I have. Now, there have been people who have mentioned having rattles just from like regular driving. I think that maybe that's just a Subaru thing. It's not like we have incredibly premium parts in here, but what we have does feel really good. I have done a lot of long distance driving, and I will say, and I still can't believe people who have premiums also don't particularly agree with me, is I think these seats for long distance driving are not that great. It hurts my back, it hurts my butt. That's actually like a pretty big deal. Like, I can't sit on these seats for more than a few hours without having to take a break and get up, because they are not the most comfortable seats. And that's one of the reasons I actually haven't wanted to switch over to racing seats, because Braun wants to send me a couple of seats, but I don't think that's something that I could live with on a daily basis. I would have to take it in and out of the car during like track events or racing events, because I don't want it to be even more uncomfortable. I'm driving to 4 different Subifests this year, and that's thousands of miles of driving, and I would like to retain some of my butt. Outside of that, everything else interior-wise still feels exactly the way they did. I did replace the steering wheel with a suede steering wheel from Rexpeed, but that was not so much for the comfort of the steering wheel, but more for the racing aspect of it, because like this wheel does have more bolstering on the sides, and it does have like the finger grips on top, and it's thicker. So it's more comfortable in the sense like I like it better for racing. And that's really the only other thing I've changed on the interior. Everything in the interior for me is pretty much the same. I still haven't gotten an actual mount to put my access port up here. I still have like the crappy one that comes with their stock thing with the double-sided tape. I wouldn't recommend that. I'm working on trying to replace it soon, but that's just how it is. So I'm not going to go into too much detail in the back seat. Obviously my daughter's seat is here pretty much all the time. And if you haven't watched, I did a Father's Day video where I actually put more kids seats in here just to kind of show some of the reliability of it in terms of just living on a daily basis. And really, we have plenty of space back here. She jumps around, she does all kinds of stuff, she makes a mess. When it comes to space, even though this is a sedan, and I know we all wish that we had a hatchback, there's really not much that I have complaints about in the back seat. I've sat in the back a few times, not a whole lot, and it's been for short trips. And I'm 6 foot 180, I don't really feel like I'm cramped back there, and I don't really feel like I'm cramped up front either. And that's been a question that I've seen a few people talk about is, you know, I'm too big, I'm too tall, I'm too wide. Now, being wide does have an issue. I do have broad shoulders, so like this part of the seats do cause me some issues sometimes because it kind of makes my shoulder blades go together in a weird way. It's hard to explain. You kind of just have to sit in there and see. But really, again, when it comes to the comfort of the vehicle, just as a daily, no complaints whatsoever. Now, this is something that a lot of people have asked over time is like, how reliable is it to use the infotainment system? Now, to be fair, Subaru has never really been known for innovation when it comes to interior mods or just like things like the infotainment system in general, but I have had zero problems with this infotainment system. Now, the only issue I had was, of course, like the buttons and not being able to use the seat warmers in winter without having to go to multiple screens. But of course, the update did help with that. And of course, Android Auto being full screen was it wasn't a deal breaker, but it sucked that it just didn't have it. And the fact that now we have Android Auto full screen is very nice. And if you haven't done that update, I will link that video down in the description as well. If you have a base or limited WRX in the US, I cannot confirm Canada and Australia, but in the US, that update does work. And man, it was really nice once we finally got it. So there's, again, not much to say because I haven't had any issues. I know some people had some issues with the 23 infotainment system, but it was not widespread enough that this news came back to me. And if it was widespread, nobody was telling me or nobody was talking about it, which is a little bit rare. Usually I hear when stuff goes wrong. So if you're worried about this part of it, the car just randomly not working one day, it doesn't do that. Like it just doesn't. And I'd say 9 out of 10 times, just turning the car off and on again should clear any issues that you have with this. Okay, now you guys are gonna like this one. This is the only major issue that I have right now. And I don't know if anybody else has this, and I wasn't 100% sure if it was something that I did, but in the past, I've been able to close my trunk just like that. I can't close my trunk anymore like that. And I just noticed this, I wanna say last week. I was like, what is going on? Why does my trunk not close? And I still don't really know what it is. Like, I thought that maybe it was something on the latch, but the latch seems fine, this seems fine, the bumpers are right where they are, the plastic never moved, but like just a light push down, this would actually close it, and this doesn't. I have to kind of shove it down, and it's not a deal breaker. Obviously, it's just a small thing. I just assume that all the driving I've been doing has caused something to be loose in the trunk, but I really can't figure it out. Now, to be fair, not many can really speak of the long-term reliability of an FA24, but there have been a lot of cars in our community that are over 50, 60,000 miles. Some even have clocked very close to, if not over 100,000 miles, and most people have been tuned. Myself, I've actually been tuned for about 36,000 of those 40,000 miles. And when I'm not getting on the car, there is no difference. And in terms of, can I really tell that this is a highly modified, I can't say highly, but is this a modified car? Other than the sound that's coming from the exhaust, if I'm shifting at 3,000 RPM or lower, and I'm just like cruising through town or just like cruise control, it is a very compliant and relaxed car. And even with having the excess amount of torque that I have now, it's still a fairly linear power band that when other people drive it, they find it surprising, especially coming from an EJ. Or any older WRX or STI. I get comments in my videos all the time asking me like, is it still reliable? I've heard XYZ about Subarus, or I just bought this WRX and I'm worried that it's gonna blow up. And you know, I try to keep my ear to the ground to these things. I haven't really heard of a lot, and by a lot, I mean like, you know, 30, 40, 50, I'd say at least maybe like 50 out of like the 40,000, 50,000 that WRXs that have sold, of them just blowing up for no real apparent reason. Usually there is some reason, whether it is the user's fault or just sometimes bad QA. Like the example I can give is the transmission. People always talk about the transmission being kind of a glass, and I mean, I'm still on the stock transmission, and I'll be honest, I defy you guys to find somebody who has beat this shit out of this thing more than I have. That's not a shop car, and even then, I'd be willing to say that I've done it more than even a shop car. This transmission has taken in part at least 300 or 350 launches, not rolls, actual digs with this transmission in varying degrees of torque. Now, some of that may have to do with the way that I launch it. Maybe it has to do with the transmission. I can't really say for sure. But the only examples that I can tell is like some people losing their third gear, even in stock cars, and that may or may not even have anything to do with the user. I think the two instances that I know of, they were actually warranted because it was just maybe like a fluke or, you know, bad QA. Like I said, there's been over 40,000 of these sold. And regardless of what people say about the sales going down or whatever, I think people are just waiting towards the end of the year to see what the 24 is going to shake like. And I think this, as long as we have these WRXs, I think they're still going to be popular. So if your concern is like, is my stock WRX going to blow up? There's a very high probability that it won't. And I think it's a high enough probability that it should ease your mind. And even if you decide to get a tune for it, you know, you get an OTS tune or you get something from D-Man, you get something from Graham, something conservative, it's going to be fine. From factory, it's not a particularly stressed engine. And I don't really think a lot of what the conservative tunes do will change that. So if you're on the fence about tuning, just, you know, be smart and be safe about it, as safe as you can be. If you have a stock one or you're thinking about getting a stock WRX, please, let me assure you, if this thing can do what it is that I've been doing with it, I think your stock car is gonna be just fine. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully it was informative. If you have any more questions, please do not mind throwing them down in the comments below, and I will do my best to answer them. And if you haven't, check out my Tuner Talk series because there's a ton of information there that may help you, whether you own a WRX now or you're thinking about getting one in the future, or you don't even have a WRX and you're just interested in tuner cars. There's something for everyone. Anyway, I will see you guys in the next one.